One of the best pieces of news came out last week in an article by Richard Haas from the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, that basically says that liberalism and the New World Order is RIP, rest in peace, it is dead DOA, okay? Those are initialisms and abbreviations and not acronyms, let me remind you of that. And this is probably one of the most important pieces that came out, especially when penned by Richard Haas. Richard Haas is a frequent guest on Morning Joe with Joe and Mika, a show who is still trying to find a reason for existing. But he has represented this group called the CFR, which for years was kind of in that murky world that people they denied the existence of it. It's almost like the Trilateral Commission in Bilderberg, and, they just they say, well, that's, there you go again with your conspiracy theories. And remember, conspiracy theory is now becoming more and more an abbreviation for the term true in any event. So what happens was, and this is important, it was highlighted by, and I want to give a shout out, of course, to some of the great independent journalists that are out there. Jamie White from InfoWars, in the Infowars.com website. CFR RIP NWO. Don't you like that? Okay. And it's subtitled, Trump Successfully Killing the Liberal World Order, Globalist Concludes. Think Tank Globalist Concludes. And I know you know this, but just in the event someone doesn't, think tanks are a group of people, group of organizations, group of folks, conglomerations of all different, persuasions, not necessarily right-wing or left-wing or progressive or conservative or libertarian or what have you, but they represent blocks of votes, money, intellectuals, self-styled intellectuals, those people who work together trying to forge either the ideology or the platform, Cato Institute, Heritage, Greenpeace, whatever. And they're like-minded, very, very legal, but they carry more power than you can imagine. And depending upon the think tank, depending upon who they are, they represent, in essence, how certain candidates are to think and what they're to say. They do the research for the candidates. They basically become outboard versions, sometimes unappointed cabinet members for various presidents. Think tanks are huge. Think tanks are very, very serious. So in this wonderful piece, which I cite for you, Mr. White responds with, the New World Order is on its last legs because of President Trump, according to Richard Haas, H-A-A-S-S. Quote, liberalism is in retreat. Democracies are feeling the effects of growing populism. Parties of the political extremes have gained ground in Europe. And this is something which is so wonderful because it speaks to, dare I say, the denouement, the valedictory, the sayonara, the adios, the see you later. The Elvis has left the room. Here's a copy of the home game, a concession, retreat. Quote, even the U.S. is experiencing unprecedented attacks from its own president on the country's media, courts, and law enforcement institutions. Don't you love that? Makes Trump sound like he's rogue. Makes it sound like he's off the rails. Attacks from its own president on the country's media, courts. Well, yeah. Notice he's writing for this on an international platform. In other words, it is said, Trump has attacked the corporate propaganda media, liberal kangaroo courts who defend lawless sanctuary city policies, and the corrupt leadership at the top of the FBI, the once heralded and vaunted chief law enforcement agency. Now, as yet again being the Luca Brasi, the enforcement arm of a corrupt globalist regime, an internal cabal and convocation of those who further act to corrupt our once proud and still great republic. Former Obama's Department of Justice, all of them who conspired against this president and basically covered up for one Hillary Rodham felon, the oven-mitt fashionista. Now, interestingly enough, as Mr. Haas's piece points out, he highlights how populism, and I love this, populism, these words are important. Populism sounds as though it's like it's not really a legitimate form. Populism, nativism, populism sounds like almost like an ochlocracy, an ochlocratic mobocracy, kind of ruled by the mob, kind of a disjointed populism. What's popular now? Something that's not really, cemented, that's based on, the euphemisms, not the euphemisms, but the insinuations are rife, and you can see them. Because remember, language is critical. I can't say that enough. Very, very, very important that you understand how words are chosen. But it says, quote, there are several reasons why all this is happening now. And why now? According to Mr. Haas, one, the rise of populism in part is a response to stagnating incomes and job loss, owing mostly to new technologies, but widely attributed to imports and immigrants. Now, stop right there. The best way to park something, the best way to take an idea, in America, you, me, all of us, taking what's ours, taking control of our beloved republic. Remember, it's a republic, not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. But when we do it, our reasons for this are always half-baked, angry. Notice how they say it's anger. It's not based upon an ideological confluence or any kind of verity or veracity of a particular ideology. No, it's based in part on response, on our response, our patellar anger response to stagnating incomes and job loss, that to new technologies, because we're a bunch of Luddites and we're losing our jobs, and also attributed to imports and immigrants. The xenophobic undercurrent. He slipped that one in there. Because remember, populism is based on hate, parenthetically, he says. Further, he writes, nationalism is a tool increasingly used by leaders to bolster their authority, especially amid difficult economic and political conditions. And global institutions have failed to adapt to new power bases and technologies. It's almost Hitlerian. Remember when they would talk about Hitler? I make it sound like there's only one time. Remember when they talked about Hitler? You know that one time they talked about Hitler? No, but whenever they do it, it's always that he rose post-World War I. We will not be, humiliated in how the rise of Nazism, came because of this collective anger. It's never an intellectual reason. Our change, not Hitler, but ours. It's always this Pavlovian response to those dark brown foreign people taking our jobs. Right? But the biggest factor in the downfall of the New World Order is Trump's America First policies. Imagine that. Quote, but the weakening of the liberal world order is due more than anything else to the changed attitude of the U.S. under President Donald Trump. The U.S. decided against joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership and to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. America First and the liberal world order seem incompatible, he added. Listen to this quote. It has threatened to leave the North American Free Trade Agreement and the Iran nuclear deal, he continued. It has unilaterally introduced steel and aluminum tariffs, relying on a justification, national security, that others could use, in the process placing the world at risk of a trade war. It has raised questions about its commitment to NATO and other alliance relations, and it rarely speaks about the democracy or human rights. Couldn't have said it better myself. NATO, you can basically bet any organization is anti-American. I mean, not in general, but worldwide. NATO, the UN, World Bank. I mean, just name it. I promise you. It is not at all compatible with our collective self-interest. Now, These groups, these people, one represents sovereignty, self-determination, and national pride, and the other groups represent serfdom, this anti-industrialism, this global governance, and the erosion of national identity. Remember, that's critical. That's the notion of classic New World Order ideology. The removal of boundaries, borders, currencies, identity, removal, just one unipolar world, as Putin said so correctly. Now, Trump is often called out on unfair trade practices, unfair practices of globalist treaties like the TPP and Paris Climate Accord. And he's also called out, I should say, for wanting to withdraw from them. Quote, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is another disaster done and pushed by special interests who want to rape our country. This is what Trump said. Just a continuing rape of our country. That's what it is, too. It's a harsh word. It's a rape of our country. Can't get any clearer than that. They give me these revelations. It's no wonder the globalists are pushing for gun control so hard lately. This is their last chance to consolidate power before it's too late for them. I cannot emphasize this enough. I cannot commend to you greater this particular piece. I cannot remind you of its sapience, its sagacity, its relevance, because what we are talking about now, while they want to talk about Stormy Daniels and stormy weather and Stormy Monday and all this kind of stuff, that's titillating and it's fun and that's great. But what this is really about, and what I've said, irrespective of cabinet positions or omnibus bills or whatever you want to say, but what is so critical, the main reason, if for no other reason, what this president represents to us and why we benefit is that he represents a destruction of this a removal, an ablation, an excision, an amputation of this cancer, this neoplasm, this almost metastatic cancer that he can remove immediately and that he can stop. And that is, call it what you want, globalism, New World Order, pick the word. It's where we lose our identity. We become, it's almost like we become psychotic. True psychosis is sometimes a disconnection between an individual human and reality. He becomes hallucinating. He hears things, or she sees things, smells things, is disconnected from the whole, from the unit, becomes paranoid, fears things, hears things. It's very, very sad. That's psychosis, schizophrenia, what have you. That's what happens when America allows itself to play into this, where we sign on to this, where we basically become dissociated from our sense of identity integrity. That's the problem. And that's what this is about. And when Richard Haas says it's over, that whatever the president does, whatever he does, whoever he picks, whether it's John Bolton or Michael Bolton, I don't care. If for no other reason these individuals claim defeat based upon his election, I'm happy. And I may do something I haven't done in I don't know how long. I may actually vote for him. Vote for a president for re-election. Don't hold your breath on it. But that's exactly what that is. This is a monumental day. I want you to celebrate. I want you to go out into the streets and yell, hallelujah. We have, this is, I was feeling kind of glum, not too crazy. He was looking a bit rudderless lately. Trump, he was. Not moored, not tethered, and not connected. A little bit kind of like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Maybe all this stuff is getting to you. But this redirects my faith. And it should you as well. Now, a couple of things. First, I want to remind you, May the 19th, go to lionelmedia.com for information. I'm going to be storming the stage with my bluegrass trio, Lock and Load. That's right, Lock and Load, a politically incorrect title, but that's been the name of my bluegrass trio for going on 30 years. We're going to be at the Cutting Room, May the 19th. Tickets are available. You can find out where you can go. Also, what's important to know is that I am going to be asking you to like the video. Please put your thoughts, comments, observations, witticisms, and analyses below. Please, if you could and you would, and I appreciate this also, would you be so kind as to like the video? I think I said that. Also, subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that little bell so you'll be notified of live streams and new videos. And whatever you do, please comment as you see fit.